we have here Sophie, who will introduce us to what Endeavor is, and then we'll let everybody introduce themselves and get started with the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Esteban. So great to be here with everyone today. My name is Sophie Kronk. I lead the education vertical at Endeavor. Endeavor is a global nonprofit organization with operations in 37 emerging markets around the world, with the mission of supporting high-impact entrepreneurship. So Endeavor selects and helps provide tailored support to the most innovative and high-growth companies in the markets where we operate. And that is by providing access to mentorship and access to capital and other forms of support. So since Endeavor's founding 22 years ago, we have selected over 2,000 entrepreneurs, and together those entrepreneurs contribute to generating over 4 million jobs every year and over $24 billion in revenue, as well as giving back by inspiring future generations of entrepreneurs to think big and innovate, as well as build strong entrepreneurial ecosystems locally. So that's Endeavor. I'll pass the mic over to the Endeavor entrepreneurs we have on the line here, starting with Andrea Narciso, who's the CEO of Kero.
Hello, my name is Andrea Narciso. I'm the CEO of Kero Education. Kero Education is a marketplace for education in Brazil. We basically connect students to schools. So far, we have enrolled more than 700,000 students, most of them in undergrad programs, which is the sector where we are more developed, where we started. But we actually act in all of the sectors in education, K-12, undergrad, post-graduation, lifelong learning. And being a marketplace for education in Brazil makes a lot of sense, mostly because those sectors in Brazil tend to be more unregulated than they are in most countries in the world. So those sectors are highly competitive, and students basically need help to choose and enroll on their programs.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Diego Olcese. I'm CEO of Creana.com. Really excited to be here and sharing our learning of what's happening in LATAM. Creana is a skills training platform for people and companies in Latin America and Spain. We have now over 4 million students enrolled in our micro courses and are working currently with over 100 companies in the region. We're basically trying to solve a huge problem of the skills gap issue that LATAM has, and trying to build the new generation of professionals in the region.
Marco.
Hi guys, Marco Fisbhen here. I am the founder and CEO of Descomplica. It's a Brazilian full-stack online education company, online education institution. We go from building the pedagogical vision, building the learning management system, all the way to B2C as a direct-to-consumer company. We work in 3 adjacent verticals, from university entrance exams all the way to fully accredited undergrad and grad degrees. We reach around 8 million students per month, and we have a little bit more than 250,000 paying customers right now in those 3 verticals: test prep, undergrad, and grad fully accredited degrees.
Great. Sebastian.
Hi everybody, my name is Sebastian Mackinlay. I'm co-founder of Digital House. We created Digital House to transform people's lives through education in digital skills. Our focus is mostly on the most in-demand digital skills, such as coding, digital marketing, data analytics, data science. And our courses are aimed at individuals that want to make a career change or need upskilling in digital skills. We focus a lot on employability. We have more than 95% employability of our graduates after the course finishes. We also work on the corporate training side, helping companies reskill their employees to tackle the digital transformation. We have students in all of Latin America and offices in Brazil and Argentina. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we'll start with the discussion. We're going to have 3 main questions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the first one I wanted to hear your thoughts collectively is about this vision of Latin America potentially becoming the next India. As we know, Latin America is a region of 650 million people, so 2 times the size of the US, with increasing size of a middle class and decreasing poverty. But there's also cultural differences with Asian countries that did not make it kind of a first entrant into the online education market. But this is, I understand, rapidly changing. So I would love, starting with Marco, to get your thoughts on what's happening culturally and in the market in Latin America across online education.
Yeah, happy to jump in first. I think we are observing right now a kind of a perfect storm in Latin America for this, in your words, cultural aspects and cultural change, and I do believe that. And it starts with us here, entrepreneurs and EdTech entrepreneurs, as a kind of a super bottom-up force, building the offerings and building a new online and digital possibilities for the students, for the individuals in LATAM. And that is also accelerated by consumer behavior, and COVID is a huge tailwind for that. I think there's more and more people in Latin America that actually understands that those offerings make sense and understand that online education is a perfect fit for the cultural aspects in LATAM. And honestly, last but not least, and again, the third aspect is also being accelerated by COVID, is the regulatory aspects. All the governments are also making it a little bit easier for startups and making it a little bit easier for regulated and non-regulated young companies to be able to deliver accredited and non-accredited degrees. So when you sum and you add those 3 components, the startups, the consumer behavior, and the regulatory environment, everything being accelerated by COVID, I think those 3 elements, they build a kind of a perfect storm for a change in LATAM.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add really quick on Marco. I think like when you compare emerging markets and you normally compare India and China, which now are consolidated countries, booming economies, usually when you see the verticals where EdTech usually flows and grows, you have 4. You have the early years, you have K-12, higher ed, lifelong learning, and corporate training. I just want to add on the comment on what Marcos is saying. I think there's a huge amount of space to grow in LATAM, more in the verticals where you can easily scale fast, independent on the government policies, on the difference that each country has. You know, when you compare, for example, the big companies that you have in India and China in tutoring, in K-12 or exam prep, I think it's easier to scale on that because you only have one geography to scale. For example, India, you have 1.3 billion people there, and you can scale it fast in only one country. When you replicate that in LATAM, you have several countries where there's a lot of government constraint on public education. So it's more easier to scale platforms where you can not depend on those government regulations, and normally like work development or workspace education platforms, higher ed and lifelong learning are the ones that usually have that boost, and that we are living it now currently. Entrepreneurs that are in this panel, they have robust operations and companies that are leading the change on those 2 segments, right? So I see a big future on this, and like Marco said, like universities as well are changing the way that they are thinking about online education, and that's really favorable for not only the consumers but also the entrepreneurial ecosystem in online education.
Esteban, to that, I would add a couple of things on that I see in Latin America. Definitely, we see a lot of change already started. On one side, I would add that comparing to China or India, on the K-12 market, specific in Brazil, it already looks like that. You have already 2 public companies, Arco and Vasta, which is a spin-off of Croton, that are focused on K-12 and already are trading and growing really fast. It probably has a lot to do with the history of Brazil, of the Sistemas Ensino, which is our net systems of content and support to schools that are already built. So this company gain on that decades-old tradition in that market. And also another trend that we see a lot is changed the shift from in Latin America from paying to get a degree towards paying to get skills. Up till now, we have millions and millions of students took on debt to get certificates. That has not led to high employment or quality employment, and this has already started to change. And I think a lot of the change that is coming in the next years has to do with this shift in education towards skills, towards employability, rather than just degrees.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's very aligned to what's happening in the US as well and other emerging economies. It's interesting what like in are more apt, dynamic and quicker to try new things. So it's not a surprise that pretty much all of you started with B2C business models. But I heard and I understand most of you, if not all of you, are rapidly looking into B2B opportunities. So clearly the institutions and the enterprise side are starting to think about online learning as well. So why don't we start with Diego and Sebastian to tell us about how's been your evolution from B2C and now incorporating B2B business models, and how much you see acceptance by institutions of online learning models. Diego, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, selling to companies is a bit hard. It's harder to sell to consumers, because when you want to sell education in companies, you need to not only sell a persons, but you need to adapt to a budget. When you sell to people, you just need to make them believe on the value of the product and the willingness that they have to pay for it. So many online education companies, when they start with consumers, and that's not only what we're seeing in Latam. We see it globally, and because it's because of the speed of go-to-market, the speed of adoption, of acquiring students and them understanding the product. That I think that's the best way to start, because online education is all about brand value, and when you start with the consumers, you can build that up. Eventually, then you make that move into that corporate segment, and that's what we're seeing right now. When you already have a robust operations of controlling the education output, when you have really good understandings of engagement, of completion rates, of cohort analysis, when you already have a really refined product that has been working directly with consumers, and then you go into B2B, you go into selling to companies, and it's a wonderful product for them because it's just exactly what they need, and they're more willing to pay for it. So I think the sophistication of an online education product takes time to understand exactly what is the best product to fit the needs of the market, and that's why usually you start with consumers. Obviously, I believe the vast opportunity of building that value at the end is going to be in companies working with the enterprise segment, and that's where Clan is going. And I think it's not because of what the enterprise provides. It's more of how the value creation you can generate in the region when you start to work directly with the companies that are in need of professionals.
Right.
Yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, just I agree. In terms of what Diego was saying on the innovation comes on the B2C. In our case, as we train on digital skills. We've always been very close to the companies because our big part of the recruiters for graduates that learn these skills. So it's always very, very close. Although we started with B2C, we always work with the companies, and then naturally happens what Diego said, that companies are going through a digital transformation and need us to others, but to help them get into the skills for their employees. And I would say that in the space that we work, that is again digital skills, there's kind of a disruption already coming from companies. The companies are changing how they're recruiting. Already Google is considering their, launch their academy, is considering graduates from their academy 6 months course, the same as a degree. Why? Because they're looking for skills. So that is really, also companies are helping to disrupt this part of the education industry, that's digital skills, where they're looking for skills and not so much degrees. So it is very interconnected, the B2C with the B2B in the industry we specific education industry we work on, and actually helps. One is a virtuous cycle where companies help students are worth for companies, the market requires for that. So it's a more natural ecosystem that works for us.
Awesome, that makes sense. And so it's exciting to see you're seeing companies starting to really, of course, respect your brand, but also like be interested in skills more than degrees.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I think it's the change is going on, and that's beautiful for the region and for the entrepreneurs that are not only in the EdTech field, but the ones that want to work directly with the enterprise segment. Perfect.
So for moving on from or downstream maybe from workforce development to higher ed, it's interesting, Marco, you mentioned that Descomplica you started in test prep to kind of the SAT equivalent in Brazil to help students get ready for that. But now you've become a fully accredited higher education institution that's going to be fully online. I understand the first one in Brazil. So can you tell us about, is the market ready for that? Are you seeing a lot of demand from students, and what courses are you launching with, etc.?
Yeah, no, great, thanks. So yeah, we started from kind of university entrance exams like the Gaokao in China, and then the SAT in the US. There's the ENAM in Brazil. It's a huge test that happens once a year, super high stakes. So that's where we started, and we are by far the dominant player there. And then the first take was kind of a move towards an adjacency space. So since we kind of own and we are a dominant player in university entrance exams, it was kind of organic as a kind of adjacent expansion into undergrad. So that's kind of number one. Number two, if you take a look at the space and if you take a look at the current environment, it's very important for everybody listening here to understand what's the context in Brazil. So let's start with the fact that Brazil is right now one of the largest premiums in the world for average monthly wages per year of formal education. So in Brazil, every year you add in formal education dramatically increases your average monthly wage. So that's the current scenario. If you can't go to college in Brazil, you should go to college. That makes a lot of a difference. On top of that, huge population. The post-secondary space is mostly private. 75% of the post-secondary space is a private space, and it's still heavily underpenetrated, even below Latin America peers. The average penetration in Brazil for higher ed is only about 20%, so even below LATAM peers. So if you take into account all of those things, there's a lot of demand there. So that's why we decided to jump into that adjacency. We launched the courses with the highest demand in Brazil right now, which is kind of management and education. Management alone is around 50% of the overall demand in higher education in Brazil, degree courses and non-degree short courses. So management is the one thing we wanted to jump in. That's what we did. And over time, we'll for sure add technology, law, health, and medical sciences. But we decided to start where the demand is right now, which is roughly 50% management, close to 20% around education courses, and then tech, law, and medical sciences goes number 3, 4, and 5. So that's where our roadmap is going in the following years. So that's kind of the current scenario right now and our line of thought to jump in the courses we are.
So exciting, so super exciting. So Andre, Cato matches students with financing alternatives and to different programs, right? You help them find the program, apply for different programs in higher education. What are you seeing as far as demands? What were you seeing, I guess, pre-COVID in terms of demand for digital solutions? And then how do you think that's changing post-COVID?
I think you're on mute, Andre. I think you're on mute.
There we go.
One thing that is really interesting in the position that we are as a marketplace is that we can look from outside what is happening in the demand. We have on our website about 60 million unique users that come around and tell us what they want to study, how much they can afford, where they live, what's the program. So it's pretty interesting to see what's happening. And this this trend of the programs from going from in-person to distance learning is actually a trend that was happening before the COVID. In the last year, before COVID-19, we had about half of our enrollments for undergrad on our platform were for distance learning. And this is very representative to what's happening in the market. So this trend was already there. I think that what happened before is that there was a perception of lower quality in distance learning. And so we saw that students who could afford an in-person education, they would choose the in-person education. What happened now is that everybody's been forced to taste the distance learning. So a lot of preconceptions are going down. And two things that happen, that I can see happen right now. One is a huge drop in demand for in-person programs, mostly because people are thinking, why pay for in-person university if you're gonna have distance learning after all, because of the COVID. And the second thing is that people are trying the distance learning and realizing that it's not necessarily bad. And then it comes a huge impact on the demand that I think it's what's gonna happen after the crisis, when things go back to normal. I think what will actually happen is that first, it will greatly reduce the price of the education overall, because this shift from in-person to distance learning, it's a lot more effective. The price tags is a lot lower, and that's great. It can increase, it can greatly increase the access for education in Brazil. So I'm really excited about that.
Can you, sorry to interrupt you, I was impressed when you told me about the numbers. Do you mind?
Yeah, exactly. You can actually have an undergrad degree now by paying as low as $50 monthly, and you can get access to undergrad. I think this is probably, you probably have some course at this price point for this Descomplica, right, Marco?
Yeah, well, our prices start at $30
exactly.
per month. So we charge $30 per month, kind of monthly tuition. So
yeah, so I think this is changing a lot the landscape. One thing that is happening is that it's reducing the need for student loans overall, because now with this price tag, it doesn't really make sense to go to a student loan anymore. And the other thing that is happening is that it's putting in check the viability, the financial viability of a lot of programs in Brazil. Because if you have a program that is not competitive to a distance learning, you have an in-person program that has no real advantage against an online education, then it's not financial viable anymore. And we are seeing some trends of many universities actually reducing the portfolio of in-person education that they have. So I think that in the long term, those are the biggest trending that we are seeing.
That's so impressive. How can you? I want to go back eventually to workforce development, but Marco, how can you manage to have a $30 a month high quality degree program?
well, it needs to be very scalable, and it's priced at scale, so it only works at scale. So the idea to have really cherry-picked teachers, absolutely centralized customer acquisition strategy, very digital, super focused on performance media, and also a national brand. You have to work in the entire country. So unlike the vast majority of kind of a formal post-secondary education, which is super regional, in person, and with cost drivers that make it almost impossible to price to scale, we have a completely different approach. So a national brand, 100% digital customer acquisition, cherry picking the best teachers to have a kind of a small but very competent pedagogical vision and team. And then when you get 2 + 2 together, you can really price at scale and become a kind of an affordable solution. Wow. So to Andrea's point, where financing becomes irrelevant. So it's also very important. Until a couple of years ago, the government, they constrained demand a lot, and also the prices were rising, so financing was necessary. And now it's easier to have a larger portfolio digital acquisition, and then make that kind of financing more and more relevant to the overall population. So it's more affordable.
Are you developing your own content, or?
We do. We are 100% full stack. So that's another, and thank you for the question, but that's another important component. Since we are absolutely vertically integrated, it's also easier to charge a little bit less. So we own the pedagogy, we develop the whole content. We have a production company within the company, our own learning management system. So no revenue sharing with LMS or with teachers or with anybody. So that kind of vertically integrated approach also help push prices down.
Very exciting. Sebastian, I wanted to pick your brain in digital transformation in Latin America. With COVID and remote work, one would think that Latin America, not only the regional companies are going through digital transformation and needs, the workforce trained with digital skills, but also companies worldwide can demand talent in the region. So are you seeing this transformation really take place? Was this pre-COVID? Are you excited to see it after COVID? How are you seeing kind of the demand of jobs changing in Latin America?
Yeah, good question. Definitely, we've been seeing the digital transformation for the last, accelerating probably 2 years ago in all the region. A lot has to do with the disruption that the digital companies are doing, like in fintech or in food, in delivery. So much of that digital transformation really comes from the companies that are not traditionally digital and need to incorporate those skills. But in terms of the demand for professional digital skills, is really both. They're now everybody's competing for this talent. You see big traditional banks hiring for thousands of employees in the tech area in Brazil. And at the same time, you have the fintechs hiring thousands. So that competition is really now accelerating with the post-COVID for sure. The companies now cannot rely on their physical solutions for many of the things, and had accelerated the demand for talent. So there's really a very, very interesting moment for professionals or people training on digital skills, because really the power is on them, and they can choose wherever they want to go. Big companies, we actually work with some big companies in helping them train and hire the people, do the whole thing, because they're really having big trouble hiring the people. It's easier today to gain a client or gain a sell than to deliver than to have the person to deliver that product. So it's the challenge is on the talent, not on the market for these companies.
That's so interesting. And you went, by the way, Digital House started with a location-based, kind of physical presence-based program, and went digital with COVID. Do you feel one of the questions that's coming is, does the society view online learning in relation to traditional on the ground? How do you feel about that conversion? And are your students appreciating online, or they're waiting to go in person? Or
right, yeah. Many times when we talk about education, it's so diverse, in terms of K-12, higher ed, undergrad, different. One thing is to learn to be a doctor, another thing is talking on what we definitely this is a change that is staying. It might go back a little bit, and I think the most important thing is to understand in what vertical, in what content that person is being educated or trained. So, for example, in digital and in short courses, definitely being online has opened opportunities for many people that couldn't do it. Grown-up professionals that already know how to work with computers and are very more familiar with these technologies. that I believe that segment will continue to go into the advantages of being online, because there's really a lot of advantages from the methodology to being able to watch videos, to record, to access from wherever you are. Really opportunities for people who are not in the big cities, or even the big cities like Sao Paulo. Moving, I don't know, 5 kilometers can take you an hour and a half. So it's really been, people are experiencing a lot of the benefits of, obviously with the quality, you can do it with quality or not, but always keep comparing same level of quality. So definitely that's.
Esteban, if I can just add on one thing that Sebastian said about the challenging of getting skilled people here in Brazil, that sometimes even more challenged to have the skilled people to work in a project than to have the product market fit as a whole. It used to be true before the COVID, but now I think things are getting worse over here. We desperately need skilled people to work on our projects here, because with everybody working from home now you're before it was just a war among the startups in Brazil, but now this war became a war among all the startups in the world. So we are starting to lose highly skilled employees to American startups as well. So we definitely need to increase the amount of skilled employees around here.
Interesting. So interesting. Diego, any commentary on how you're seeing the kind of the evolution online, the appreciation of online? Yep.
Yeah, I was reviewing a couple of questions that they posted on the chat, and I wanted to quickly answer the last one, which is really interesting to talk about, is the challenge to position online education or self-education in people in LATAM. Because I think that's one of the massive challenges that all EdTech companies have. If you take a look at the demographics of our consumers in the B2C side, I would say that most of all of our customers are middle-class customers, or emerging customers, emerging class, and normally the traditions of these classes and the way that they live, the way that they work, the way that they educated themselves, there are some cultural behaviors that are kind of difficult to structure. When you want to learn online, you have to be really organized. I don't know if you guys have tried when you tried your products and eventually wanted to learn online, that's the challenge. It's like we're working from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and we want to dedicate some time to learn. There's a lot of people that have those behaviors, and especially middle-class families or consumers. So I think there's two answers on this. The first one is just what Sebastian was talking about, right? The opportunity to be employable through online education, and the middle class wants that, and that's why they are paying our products, because they want to be more employable. They want to have the correct skills to get the jobs that are more demanding now. So there's a lot of brand positioning and partnerships that EdTech companies do in the regions to make that happen. Not only with companies, but universities, or building their own brand and having that diploma respect. Because at the end, I know we're trying to make the challenge of people, the LATAM people, you need skills, but at the end, there's something really cultural about the diploma, which is going to be kind of difficult to change. LATAM people like their diplomas, and that's something that we can change. And the other side of that is the technologies that we are developing to engage with our users so that they can be more proactive in their learning. Machine learning, mobility through the development of applications or push notifications or intelligent and ways to interact with our consumers to solve that first issue, right? The structured way to address online learning, especially on that middle class, especially on that. So I think that's a big challenge that we have in the region, and possibly that other countries or regions don't.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Esteban, if I might jump in, just kind of last comment on that. It's also, I think it's also helpful to think of big waves in Latin America. So there was a kind of social media, and then e-commerce from flash sales to superstructured e-commerce companies, and then fintechs, and now online education. So it's very clear in Brazil and in Latin America that we are in this kind of fourth wave of online education, and we are now catering and talking in a demographic to kind of low income, young, tech savvy students. And that kind of demographic understands the need for better structure, understands that they are all tech savvy, so it's not more distance learning for 50 years old or 40 years old because it's convenient, but it's now online education for 18, 20, 25-year-olds, also because it's convenient. Yes, it is, but it's actually because it's the best solution, because you can have the best teachers, the best digital experience, and you can you can teach them, you can get them employable. So it's not, the convenience plays a role for sure, but this massive wave that we're seeing right now is because this young population, middle class, low income, super tech savvy understands that this is actually the best alternative for that specific demographic.
Cost effective, yeah, no doubt.
They have another mindset, you know, they have another mindset. The new generations, they have other mindset.
So Andre, there was a question about what technologies you think are revolutionizing education. You have some comments on that? We do.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, because what I actually haven't seen in terms of the technologies is that it's not rocket science what is revolutionizing the education in Brazil. Actually, it reminds me a lot of what happened at the beginning of the movie theaters. The first providers of movie theaters, they actually just recorded the theater, and then they show to the audience. This is what happened in the distance learning in Brazil for the previous years. And so now what I'm seeing actually, that the best players in online education, they're not coming through with some rocket science, breaking through technologies, not like that. They're just using some steady technology, well-known technology, but providing a service that is made for this technology, that is fought for this technology from day one. And I think this is making a huge difference. I think we are moving from recording the theater to actually really recording a movie. And this is the difference that we are seeing right now in the landscape.
One thing that, to that point, one thing that's always been very characteristic of Latin America, and Marco mentioned social networks, is how social our population is. I think it has the highest engagement on pretty much every social network. How do you guys embed community and peer-to-peer in your online communities? Marco, maybe Sebastian want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry, Sebastian, go ahead. I think you're
Go.
Okay, cool. So quickly, no, I think it's very important to be able to personalize the experience, and it's very important to be able to kind of know who you are and cater to your needs. But that's kind of short term, but in longer term, you get much better engagement when you make it social, especially in Latin America. And actually not just Latin America, but if you go to North America, in the end of the day, from kind of low income to super kind of sophisticated MBAs, in the end of the day, you learn as a group. So the idea to build a learning management system that takes into account the social experience, put together those groups and create an environment where the kids and the students can really learn peer-to-peer, let them ask questions to other peers, let the other peers answer those questions, and be able to get a kind of a strong group of people together throughout the program that massively improves outcomes from scores to engagement rates. So working as groups is super, super important in online education in Latin America.
Totally agree with Marco's comments, and adding to Andrea also that, I mean, this is not, at the end, it's not new. We all learned in groups. I mean, we went to university, and really the much of the learning was going on outside, you know, in a social, and that's what many of the EdTech companies today have been able to solve that in not a rocket science technology, but really having it present and knowing that that is important and making it as part of the DNA of the course of the learning, both between peers. In our case, we also see a lot the role of the teacher that is social, so that can move students to different levels. So that interaction, professors and students within students, is what we see that makes a huge difference in the online space, because that's what drives them together and makes big difference.
Awesome, great to see. Well, hopefully the audience learned a lot about our region. I really want to thank each one of you so much. Like I said before, it's very likely that this was the first, but panel on Latin America at the ASU+GSV, so we're a little bit making history here. And I feel by the time, most of the sessions are in Latin America, we have as big of a representation as India or China have had, the unicorns would have been minted, which is, you guys are now, setting the path with extremely impactful companies that are helping the region get higher education degrees, get jobs, and being trained for the future of work. So with that, I thank Sophie and the amazing Endeavor team for originating this panel and the idea, and everybody for convening and coming, and excited to follow your companies as you guys continue to grow. If there's any final remarks you want to make, I open the floor, but otherwise I think we'll be relatively cut in about a minute.
I just want to thank the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you all.